One. So, Michaela Shore, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, I see here project manager for a big media company. We were talking offline. We're going to keep things kind of, semi off the record, semi on the record, but big media company. And now you have your own podcast as well. So thanks for jumping on mine. And
I talk for a living,
Absolutely. I'd love to return the favor. I'd love to be a guest on yours and cross promote and triple, quadruple promote and all that stuff. But
they'll get sick of us just everywhere.
Absolutely. So Michaela, go ahead and tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and what you've been up to.
Yeah. Well, I'm 24. I live in the DC area. Before the pandemic, I was working for a large media company, and I was doing events and concerts, and it was very kind of music focused, which I loved. But then obviously when the pandemic happened, that's not a thing right now. So I was doing office work for the same company as well. And then at night I was a server and a bartender. So I kind of was never home, did a little bit of everything. Well, then they closed the restaurants too. And then after a while I was doing the Zoom stuff for that company. And after a while they just ran out of stuff for me to do because the whole world changed and we didn't need every single job anymore. They kept me on, like they liked me, they didn't want to screw me over, but I was being kept on, but I wasn't working and I wasn't making any money. So I didn't get unemployment, I didn't get a stimulus check. And it was just a really weird situation. So when restaurants opened up in the summer, my restaurant here was still closed because they did it by county, but
Right.
Ocean City opened up. So I just kind of said, screw it, and moved to Ocean City, and I served down there all summer. And so it was still weird. We were still in a pandemic, but at least I had a job and I was making money, and there was no walk-up bar service. So the servers ended up making way more money than the bartenders. So it worked out well for me. But then I came back, and at that point, restaurants were open back here. So I just went back to my restaurant job, and I officially resigned from the media job because, once again, there's not much going on there right now. Everything's they're on the skeleton crew right now. So and before Corona even happened, I started my podcast last fall. So I've been kind of doing that, but Corona also kind of messed that up too, because I would have a different guest on every week. And then, when we were on the stay-at-home order and this and that, I found it really hard to keep the podcast going. So that kind of got messed up. So as of right now, I'm just serving bartending, but as of yesterday, indoor dining's closed. So I'm furloughed again. So this year I've been all over the place. I've been up and down. I've been employed and unemployed, but as of right now, I'm unemployed again.
Well, we can definitely talk off. Yeah, we can definitely talk offline, and I can walk you through, like a 20-step kind of setup if you want to get that podcast going the way I have. It's or have you gotten it?
That's that's kind of what's been on my mind. Now that I'm unemployed and it's for a minimum of a month, probably I feel like it's going to be closer to 2. That's kind of my thing. I'm like, well, I still have this podcast and everyone else has made it work remotely. People have been Zooming countries and all that. So starting around the holidays, since it's not a stay-at-home order, but I plan on not really leaving the house too much. I really want to amp up the podcast. Like, people have been telling me to do video. I've never done video because I always liked kind of being gross when I recorded and not having to worry about my appearance. But now I'm like, that's where everything is. You got to put on YouTube, and people like to watch.
You only have to work on the waist up.
Yeah. Everything. I'm in sweatpants right now.
like sweatpants, yeah, or gym shorts. I only have pants on today because right after we're done, we're gonna take the kid out for his first snow. But but usually it's like I might be like semi nice on the top, kind of casual, but it's like gym shorts or it's like sweatpants.
Yeah, and I just put it off. I've talked about this on my podcast before, that I just never wanted it to be about presentation. I always just wanted it to be about me talking. But I'm kind of at the point now where if the podcast as of right now is all I really got, I want it to be the best it can be. And I think, I used to think it was so complicated to do it in Corona, but everyone has just made it look so easy. So I'm hopefully after Christmas, I'll get the right equipment. I asked for a ring light because I'm an influencer now. So
awesome.
I'm gonna try to make that work. But we'll see. But so this is my first kind of video podcast. I've been on other podcasts. I've never done video. So
Well, it's, especially with Zoom. I mean, we can talk more in depth offline, but especially with Zoom, when I first started off with the Zoom, you can record. And so I would do that, but then I would have to, drop it into Final Cut, and then, like duplicate the shots and crop, and then make a compound, and then put stuff on top of that. And that took like a whole day to render and export and upload.
And
And then I watch it. Well, yeah, and then once you have it uploaded, then I'm watching it. I'm like, oh man, I messed up this one thing, and I got to go back and fix that, and then wait for the rendering. But but now with the live streaming, I was always, for the last 10, 15 years, I was always crew, film and TV production, commercials, music videos. But I always jumped on live streaming because I knew that was where video games were going. That's where TV was going. That's where, live broadcast was going. I saw YouTube starting to build up these, live streaming things. And so I always jumped on that tech, and that started working within basically just using Zoom as the cameras. Then you got your streaming software, and you're kind of moving stuff around, and then that's sending out the signal. You got some title stuff. And so, like I said, I don't want to bore the audience with like a bunch of.
I know. I'm like, I like that. Well, the thing with me, the hardest part about the podcast for me, I'm not a tech person. I'm not very tech savvy. It took several people to explain the recording, the editing, whatever. So I absolutely hate editing my podcast. So the last 20 or so episodes, it's literally, I put my music in, I do the ad software, and I just throw it out. Like, I don't edit at all. And so I'll literally, like, it's not, I mean, I don't think it's unprofessional because I prefer to be more real, but every once in a while I'll be like, oh, that was dumb. Oh, well, I'm leaving it in anyway. And like the podcast keeps moving because I hate editing. So the thought of live stream, I'll probably move to that too. That sounds,
I mean, it adds an aspect of hilarity and natural, organic. I had a number of, previous guests on here. We were talking about this Japanese term called wabi-sabi, where like the cracks in the seam give it more authenticity and an organic pleasure to it. Stutters and if Zoom starts crapping out, we're like, hello, there's a delay, like shit like that's funny. And so I stopped editing. I totally stopped editing. I wanted this thing to be plug and play, turnkey. That's the term. I wanted this thing to be turnkey. Turn it on, roll, be natural, be organic. There might be internet issues with you. And the only time I would do that, say I've had guests that their internet went out. So I've got a thing I can cut to. It says technical difficulties. It looks kind of goofy. Wait for them to come back on. And that's the only time I would go back and splice that out. Because
if that's like extended,
that's
probably the main things I edit are just like, I'm very big on like privacy, because there are a decent amount of people that listen that don't know me in real life and like slide in the DMs and shit. And so if anytime somebody accidentally says like the name of my job or at one point I told my friend not to do it, and then I actually said my street name in Ocean City, and stuff like that. Then we're like, oh, and like I have to go back and edit that because I don't want to die yet. But other than that, I'm very I'm a very big like I said what I said kind of person. Like I might look back on an episode 6 weeks later and be like, wow, that was dumb, but I'm not going to take it out because I said it. When coronavirus first started, I did a solo podcast, and I was just like, this thing's so dumb. It's the flu. Like, I can't believe no one will come over and record with me. This is dumb, whatever. And then the very next podcast, I was like, I'm sorry, guys. It's not the flu. Stay home. I feel like it's just inauthentic to just go back and take out what you said. You said it. Own it.
Yeah. And you raise a good point. There was another web series we did where pre-COVID, pre-quarantine, every single gig I was on, or every single traveling little trip me and the wife did, or when we first brought the kid home, and then we got stuck into this quarantine kind of limbo. And I was just shooting everything and making like, wacky little episodes. But there was a lot of times where I would use stock footage of, say, snow, a drone, flying over a neighborhood with fresh snow on the treetops, and it looks like my neighborhood. The fact is, it is snowing. I'm telling a story that is factual. I'm not using the exact footage. I'm not outside.
Hey, this happened today.
But kind of for that same kind of for, it's not like, you know, I'm the biggest YouTuber on the planet. No one, you know, I'm still building my audience, but there were other videos where I had to like cut out my address. I had to cut out the number on my front door, and I'm like, oh, all right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, when it comes to like stuff like that, I'm going to use stock footage instead, because it's still telling an accurate story. It's not my exact address. I don't want, you know, some I don't want some burnt bridges coming to my house, because I do have some burnt bridges, you know. and you know,
oh, my podcast gets me in trouble a lot.
Right.
I don't, it actually, it gets my friends in trouble more than me, like, because I think I'm used to it, you know, since I've worked in radio and it's my podcast and I do every episode. 90% of my guests are my friends who've never done a podcast, never listened. They're so green. And so I think they come in and they get so comfortable talking with me, they get lost in it, that they forget, like, this is recorded and being put out. So they'll, you know, talk shit about people in their lives. They won't say names, but like, then that person will listen and know they're talking about them. One of my friends got, like, she talked about this time she hooked a guy, and his girl, I guess he had a girlfriend, and she listened to it and like found out her boyfriend was cheating on her through the podcast, you know, like, like people listen, they try to act like they don't listen, and then they listen and they find shit out, and it snowballs.
And my big thing is,
it's hard.
My big thing is, I'm sure you saw in like that initial email or DM that I sent you, inviting you on here, you know, there's this, it's a podcast, and it should be understood that what we talk about on Zoom is going to be recorded for the purposes of this podcast. And I think now people should have that general understanding that there might be some people listening. I know for a fact I had 10 people listen to one of my podcasts. At least 10 people have listened to at least one, according to my algorithms. I wish it was more, but I mean, there's a lot that could get discovered just by 10 people listening to it.
100%.
You know? So it's like
I look at my numbers sometimes too, and there are times where like a certain episode will really pop off, and it'll have hundreds, and then but simply in that person's life listened to it and sent it to, oh, you got to hear so and so on this podcast, and it spreads around that way. So yeah, it's like, I guess it's easy to forget because I'm with my friends, so they do feel really comfortable, but at the same time, like, they know it's a podcast, they see the microphone, they see me with the software, they listen to it themselves. Like, I don't think I've ever had someone on that's never heard my podcast, so it's just funny that that just goes out the window.
And that's another thing. And that's another thing. In my invite to you had a link to the podcast, and so by the time you watch it, you're going to see, I think, between the time that you watch my podcast and then eventually come on it, you're seeing a pretty relatively recent episode.
Yeah, like, you know? I think I watched like the last two, and it's like, first of all, I would never sign on to something if I didn't know what it was. So the fact that you did provide all the links and everything was great. So yeah, I think it's easier for us because this is our thing and our content, and so we don't need to be reminded of that. But I guess if you have just, once again, my friend from high school or like a random person on, it's easy for them to kind of get lost in it and forget. I am very careful not to say names though. So it's like, yeah, okay, people figure it out from context clues, but it's not like I'm putting everyone's business out there. I also, you know, I guess I could edit a little more, but I don't really. Once again, I said what I said, you said what you said. And
like you said, and so there's another trick to that, to where there was a case where I mentioned something about my buddy and his job, and he goes, no, you got to cut that out. And so I looked at a certain time code, took a note, and so then I was able to go back and find that time code on YouTube and on some of the other platforms, and do that splice. Yeah. And then, and especially with my setup, then I hit another button which showed like something completely out of place, but like a specific logo, and then cut back to us. And I said, okay, I'll take care of that. We move forward, but you know, I'll cut it out. Blah 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 blah. You know, I mean, you're gonna have that every once in a while. I mean, hopefully it's not like R. Kelly storming off of what's her face's set when they asked that question. He's like, y'all killing me with this. He stormed off or whatever.
Why would he even do it? Like, bro, you're guilty.
In the height, bro. In the height of it. In the super height of it.
Like, I just, like, you did that to your, like, I get that. I guess they don't want to, if like there's a big scandal, they don't want to go underground, but I'm like, dude, you did it. Like, just
Come
like,
on.
did you think you were going to look good at the end of that interview? Did you think they were going to be like, so what's your favorite color? Like, no.
We're not asking about your new iTunes release, bro. Come on. Use your head. We're gonna talk. We're good.
Yeah.
What was it? Trapped in the Closet 773, episode 73.
Oh my god, yeah.
And well, I didn't expect to go that route, but that was such a great series. That
finish it.
That dude.
What was it? The R. Kelly documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even. I got probably halfway through, and I was so disgusted. I literally like could have vomited just from watching it. Like it. Oh. It was a hard
watch. It's a hard watch.
Very well done, but yeah, it was.
But that
watch. And then some of the girls are still like, he did nothing to me. I love him, and you're like.
But there was that. But there was that white reporter. There was that white reporter that just stopped everything and followed him and covered every little thing. And he, yeah. I think he lost his job. I think he had to go go completely independent as a reporter because he just wouldn't leave it alone. There was lawyers coming after his media company or whatever. So they let him go. And he goes, okay, fine. And so finally at the end of the second season, he just stood there just like, yep. And then the lawyer, he ripped, and that same reporter ripped into R. Kelly's lawyer who was trying to diminish some of the statements. He goes, don't you dare, don't even dare. I felt, as a male, I felt like this guy put everything out on the line to cover R. Kelly. And, it was really hard to see, what these women went through. Yeah, it was really troubling to see, it was a hard watch. It was a hard watch, but having seen this guy, he just didn't stop. I think since this guy was trailing his ass, this reporter, and I can't remember his name, but he was like a heavier.
We need passionate people like that because that story had been around. I mean, Aaliyah and him, that was in the 90s, and people just kind of let it slide. Aaliyah, yeah. People just let it slide. And so it's like, you kind of need somebody doing that. And I mean, if the fact that he lost his job and he didn't stop there, or they weren't like, if you don't stop, you're going to lose your job, and he didn't cave. That's, need people like that. And he,
Yeah, it's just like that other reporter.
So
it's just like that other reporter that traced the whole crack epidemic in, South Central LA to the CIA. And he just kept reporting it. He couldn't get a job. They were like, setting him up. That reporter eventually killed himself because his wife and kids left him, and he couldn't get work. And they just bashed him personally, professionally, all that stuff. He eventually committed suicide. Jeremy Renner played him in the movie version. So there's a movie on it.
I'll watch that. I didn't know about that.
But, this guy, it wasn't as huge. R. Kelly's not as huge as the CIA trying to cover their tracks, but I mean, this guy just would not relent. And every little step R. Kelly took, that guy was right behind him. Like, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to relent. And it was fantastic. Well,
go back and finish it at some point. But
it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth a finish.
I could probably do an episode at a time, but I watched like the first, 5 or 6 in a row. It was like, ugh.
Yeah, I binged it. And it was daunting to binge. It was, and I think the second season came out during the beginning of quarantine.
I didn't know there was a second season. You said that earlier, and I'm like, oh my god.
So I think the second season picks up midway through his trial, or picks up just as his trial. So the first season was what really threw
the background
everything into like super spotlight mode. It was the first season, and so the second season follows the beginning and end of the trial, and more victims coming out. And it was like 47 women.
I know.
47.
Over like decades. Oh my god.
Since I think Aaliyah was I believe Aaliyah was the first, and that was 93 or 94.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Because I know
Romeo, like publicly, but like we, this clearly goes way far back.
Yeah.
what blew my mind about that was like, I mean, I get, you know, the 90s is, you know, 20, 30 something years ago, but like when they were dating and then she comes out with the song Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. And it's just like,
yeah. Well, as it turns out, he wrote that.
yeah.
That was all his ploy. That
Yeah.
was all his magical. That was all his magical image pushing. But actually, Aaliyah was second. I was wrong. Aaliyah was the second one, if I'm not mistaken. There was one. Aaliyah was the second or third one. There was one or two before. But yeah, it's an incredible.
My friend who's 24, she met this guy on Tinder, and I think it said he was like 22, but then in his bio it said he was actually 19, and she didn't see that till after, and she was like, "Oh, like 5 years is different, like whatever." And he goes, "Age ain't nothing but a number," and she's like, "Nope, we are not using that term."
If you're quoting that guy, we got a problem.
Yeah, she was like, "Unmatched." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, onto a lighter note, you know, maybe more fun. So let's delve more into your podcast. Like, what is your general, you know, like subject matter? Yeah.
So when people ask me, I kind of just say it's just about my life, because I kind of just talk about my life. But the thing is, with my life, it's a mess. So, you know, I'll talk about, like, I just have the craziest nights out, like all kinds of stuff's going on. I get the weirdest DMs. I have the weirdest hookup stories. I kind of just talk about all that, but then I also have a different friend on every time. So like, it'll be people I've been friends with for years. So like, they'll like, just by us talking, they'll dredge up like, "Oh, remember 4 years ago when you did da-da-da," and it's pretty much just like roasting me, but I'm like in on it. So, but yeah, I say it's like a lifestyle. And it's the kind of thing that even if you don't know me, you can still listen to it, because I feel like even though my life's a mess, a lot of people's lives are messes. And a lot of people, most of my listeners are around my age and they've had similar experiences. So it's really that. Sometimes I talk about pop culture, sometimes, yeah, a little bit of everything.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, every once in a while, I'd say like every 10 episodes of this, I have, you know, my same colleagues on, we do like a round table, but it might be similar to that, where we talk about, well, we're all like pretty much average. We're like 40-year-old white men. So,
yeah,
you know, not really frat boys, but more like beer bros. And two of us are military vets. So we kind of discuss stuff along those lines, you know, like, remember when we got drunk 5 years ago in New Orleans and we got lost, or, you know, sometimes we'll bring up old stuff like that, but somehow we always end up talking about wrestling, pro wrestling, or obviously, you know, always like superhero comic book stuff too, maybe some video game stuff. But yeah, like I get it. I get it now. It's like yeah, and bringing up
like in the beginning, just in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I used to plan, you know, I used to have a notebook and like subject matters. And then as it's gone on, I'm so much more comfortable. And at this point, I'm like 30, 40 episodes in. So people know me at this point. And so I just feel like my audience and everything, I just feel a lot more comfortable. And I really just talk about anything. And the most popular ones are kind of the more like raunchier episodes, like the ones with like, you know, inappropriate titles and stuff, are the ones that get like 50 times the amount of listens.
Oh, of course. So yeah.
I do want to play to that, but I also don't want it just to be that, because I'm also, you know, I'm unemployed now, but I'm trying to get a job eventually. So yeah, it's just a little bit of everything. I think everything I'm talking about is everyone has gone through. It just might not be as dramatic. Like I am a very dramatic person, so I do kind of play things up a little bit. But it's all fun.
Well, not to give your address away or your location away, but are you in Maryland?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm right on the DC border in Chevy Chase.
All right, you gave too much away. See,
I know, right?
I
talk about that.
Are you a DMV original?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
In house my whole life. I mean, I've like moved out at various times, but I'm back here now. Unemployed.
That's awesome. So not being unemployed is not awesome, but well, listen, this was a great opportunity for me, and like you did as well. Like, I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to build like a number of new innovative brands and start a podcast, like maybe collect, you know, fun employment or something like that. And the second, I think I was episode 10 or 15 into this, and I had some folks that I worked with prior to quarantine on as guests, and they're like, oh bro, you know how to do this, you know how to live stream, and you know how to use this software and that software. Hey man, we're doing everything, we're doing all of our shows that we were doing, but we're all doing it remote now, like it's all virtual now. Oh, okay, cool, like send me some stuff. And now I've never been busier before quarantine than I have now been during quarantine. And I don't know if you and I have shuffled some of these dates before, like we rescheduled or something, but it's like I'll have I know I think we changed our time today. But,
we changed our time. Yeah.
But
I have nothing going on. That's fine.
but like there's been guests on. Huh?
Oh, no, you go.
I lost it. But I've had guests on where it's like I'm constantly like, hey, I gotta bump you, hey, I gotta bump you, hey, I gotta bump you. And there's been a couple of guests where I lost them because I frustrated them so much. Hey man, forget it, dude. Like, are you serious about this? And I'm like, listen, look at the podcast. I got some really unique guests. I have, quite a bit of content already. I am serious about this, but I had no idea I was going to get so freaking
But that
busy.
Makes me jealous because I really wish I had taken the lockdown and everything as a way to bump the podcast up. Instead, I just got lazy and I was super depressed because I'm such a social person. I worked 2 jobs. I was going out. I was never home. And so when I physically could not see people, those 3 months were like the worst. I really wish I would have knuckled down and said, let me focus on the podcast. Let me take this as, everyone was being so creative. Everyone was making TikToks and doing interviews and all kinds of, everyone really took like content and media seriously. And I kind of wish I did that. So that's why I'm like, okay, this time around, it's not a stay-at-home order, but I'm still, I don't have to go to work. So I'm going to really try to kind of bump that up. So yeah, I'm like what you did. I hope I'm busy enough that people are fighting me to be on and I have to reschedule them 50 times. But now now I can't go to bars, so I'm so productive now.
Well, I'm not saying people were fighting to get on the show, but it was just like, hey, I got people scheduled for, 3 weeks out. And it's like, but I've bumped this person 3 times already. They're like, dude, are you even serious about this? And I'm like, I can't pass up the paid work though, and hopefully maybe I would love for this thing to become a thing, to be the thing. And then I could focus and I could just do what I want, what I love completely.
Yeah.
I love doing this.
My full-time job. That would make my life so much easier.
They're very few and far between, man. It's like, it's tricky to be like that number 1 or even number 2 or number 3. But it's working for some people. Somehow, maybe, I don't know, sponsorships. I mean, you got a Red Bull sponsorship or something?
I have tried. I talk about Red Bull. Like, I do so much for them. I'm like this whole, I was like, should I cover the label because they're not giving me money? Like, I should get sponsored by Red Bull. I should get it all. I don't know. I really, the podcast was just kind of a hobby for so long. And I was very adamant about not putting ads in. But then after a while, I'm like, well, like, I'm unemployed. I pay for the software and the website that puts it out on all platforms. I pay for that monthly and the equipment and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like, as much as I loved doing it just for fun, I'm putting money into it. Like, I don't need $1 million, but I'd like to at least break even.
Right.
What I'm spending in software. So the last 2 episodes or whatever, I put ads in. And it's the kind of thing, people don't want to listen, they can skip. It's, I hope they don't hate me. I don't control what the ads are. So a lot of time it has nothing to really do with like my listeners or brand, if you will. So they can skip it if they want, but it's giving me a little bit of money back, which I need. But yeah, I would love for this to be a full-time thing.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's hard. At least at this point, the amount of people that started a podcast in quarantine, that was so annoying. I saw this tweet and it was like, podcast mics are sold out on Amazon. And I was like, I did it first. Okay, not first, but I did it before all those people. And, so now I feel like they're just so common. There's too much to listen to. So you really do have to stand out. So I'll try this next month. I'll try.
I think the ones that stand out are the ones that are just doing whatever the hell they want to do. And I thought of a good gimmick. I was suffering. I was losing gigs. How do I stay active? How do I stay productive and creative? And it was like, I'll do this, and I'll ask others that same thing. If we tap into, you know, R. Kelly conversations or Joe Biden, Donald Trump conversations, so be it. But it's, you know, start with how I was affected and reach out to others and how they've been affected. And, you know, some really cool stories, some really cool success stories, some depressing stories. But, you know, thankfully and luckily, a lot of success stories and a lot of creativity, a lot of inspiration. Which leads me to what is your podcast? What's it called? Where can we find it?
I was like, did I say the name? It's called Pretty Irrelevant. It's on every single podcast platform, Spotify, iTunes, Google has a podcast sector now. And let's see, I've been doing it for a little over a year. I, you know, totally the subject matter. It gets a little inappropriate. I do curse a lot. So every single episode is labeled explicit for
who gives a shit.
Yeah, right. Thank you. But apparently, you know, basically, I had never even heard of a podcast. I never listened to one. I always thought it was just kind of like two dudes in a room talking about finance. Like I never, you know, yeah, like I thought it was like
50-year-old white guys talking about finance, right?
I thought it was, you know, two old men in a room, like, so stocks today. Like I didn't think there were other podcasts out there. And then I started working for that media company, and this girl was training me, and she had my position. And so we were the same level. And she started talking about how she and our other coworker had their own podcast. And I was like, because in my mind, I thought you had to be an old guy who went to Harvard, or you had to be like a celebrity. I didn't know you could just start one. And she's like, no, for real. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, like I would love to be on air on the radio, but there are so many rules and so many things you have to talk about that you don't care about, and you can't curse, and you can't, you know, talk about a hookup, and you can, whatever. It's very kind of by the book. And so she told me, kind of introduced me to this world of podcasting. So I planned on doing it for a year, but I was a full-time student. I had that job. I just had so much going on, and I put it off. And finally, like every 2 or 3 months, I would make another step. Like my friend's a graphic design major, and so I asked for a logo, and we like helped design the logo. And then like 3 months after that, one of my friends was a DJ, and he like mixed me some music, and I was like, cool, got the music. And it was kind of one by one. My mom helped me come up with the name, because I was struggling so hard trying to find a name, and I just kept being like, it just sucks because, you know, I'm not this celebrity and nobody knows who I am, who's gonna listen. And she was like, oh, you should call it Relevant. And I was like, why would I call it relevant when I'm irrelevant? And then we kind of, from there, came up with Pretty Irrelevant. So yeah, so it's a lot. I finally put it out. In order to launch, you need 4 episodes. So I had to record 4 episodes. And once again, that took months, because I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing. And I finally launched it, and it's been great ever since. I used to record every single week. And then, you know, once again, Corona kind of screwed that up. So now that I have all this time, I'm going to get back to once a week. And I'm really excited. I'm going to put a lot of energy into this. I'm not a professional, but I fake it till I make it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we did. Me and you know, the numerous colleagues, there's about 5 of us total in the zombie squad that we call ourselves.
I know. I'm like, I got to meet the others.
But you know, we actually tried the podcast twice before, even pre-COVID was the 2 times, doing it virtually. And it was like a setup where we were so cheap. I had one person coming in. I had one 3-way call on Skype, but I can only bring in one person from Skype. Then we also had the same 3-way call on Google Hangouts, but I had the other person on Google Hangouts. So I was using like 3 different Zooms or whatever, or Skypes or whatever. I was using all 3 of them at the same time, and then trying to bring that in. And then if someone lost, I got to get up and hit a button. It was nightmare.
I think more than half my episodes were sharing one mic, because after a while my computer stopped recognizing both mics and it was screwing up the audio. So
okay.
Majority of my episodes, I literally have a mic here, and me and the person are this close, and we're done. I'm very low budget. Like
so tell me, what do you think?
Yeah, and
like Men on the Street style.
A lot of my friends are professional on-air personalities from when I worked in radio, and so I would have them on, and they would just kind of, we'd be sitting on the floor of like my room or my guest room, hunched over this one mic, and they would just kind of be like, you know, it was like doing charity work. Like they were like, oh, this is cute. Yeah, I definitely need to step up technology.
Hey, listen, man,
for sure. But
you know, I've
always just been about the content.
It's not what you have.
Yeah, it's what I say.
Yeah. I
People
think there's
still believe in
a
people
delay on Zoom. I think there's a delay on Zoom,
Oh, okay.
but it's not what you have, but what you do with it. And I've had, like, you know, half my guests, we've all pretty much come to that conclusion. It's not what you have, but what you do with it. I've got like some really low tech productions, some really low production, low budget, super ultra low budget productions that, you know, somehow came out decent, if not good. But it's, you know, like, yeah, you got to wing it. You got to fake, like you said, fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I know. I feel like if I just act like I'm a professional, people will believe it. But.
Well, I think the trick is, if you have a podcast, if you're a subject matter expert on something, that needs to be what your podcast is about. And so at this point, like, your podcast is about, like, you know, terrible nights out, terrible hookups. At one, and listen, I've been there myself. And you know, you get to that point where you're a subject matter expert. You know how to avoid those shitty hookups, those disastrous.
You'd think so.
Tinder.
It's so funny because I'm very, like, the podcast is a big part of my life, and not everyone is, obviously, whether I say a name or not everyone's okay with being on it. So anytime I am kind of about to date a guy or whatever, I do bring it up, and they're always like, "Oh, so you're gonna talk about me?" Like, and I'm like, if you do something interesting. But, like, if you're, you know, if it's standard by the book, no one's gonna care. You know, it's kind of, it's like, I don't want to go through some bullshit, but if it's a good story, I think about the podcast. Like, about a year ago, I was in a bar, and there was a bar fight that broke out, and they crashed into me, and I, like, rammed into this chair, and my shin went into, like, the metal bar on this chair, and within seconds I could tell, like, that something is fucked up. And my sister and I, we went into the bathroom. She was with me, and, like, I pulled my pants up, and it looked like I had two knees. Like, it was like my knee, and then this, and
then
like,
that lump.
It was so bad. And I was like, what? So then we go back to, like, the people we were with, and we're like, something's really wrong. I think I might have to go to the hospital. And security's over there, and I look, and, like, the guy that was in the fight is, like, still there, like, hanging out. And so I kind of go up to security. I was like, yo, like, they really injured me. So security gets the guy, and he's like, I'm sorry, sweetie, like, want a drink? And I'm like, actually, no, I think I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. Like, I don't know. I didn't really know what I was gonna, like, get out of that. I was just drunk and was like, I'm not gonna let him just get away with this. So then this girl, I guess was friends with them, comes up screaming in my face, was about to fight me. They're holding her back. She's like, how dare you say he hurt you? Like, it was just a horrible night. My sister and I go home, we go to the hospital. They, like, wrap me up, everything, whatever. And the entire time, instead of, like, crying, instead of, like, saying this is the worst thing ever, whatever, the entire time, I guess I was drunk, but I kept turning to Melissa and was like, it's gonna kill on the podcast. Because this is gonna be awesome. Like, me, you know, me ranting about these people that beat the shit out of me, like, sick. And so, yeah, it's like, even when unfortunate things happen, I'm always like, well, the podcast will love this. And so it's kind of been a good outlook on, horrible. Exactly. I'll have a horrible hookup, and instead of being like, that was a waste of time, I'll be like, this is gonna kill. So
I mean, like,
I really love doing the podcast.
It's all those disastrous stories too. I mean, I've had a number of disastrous film set stories, and so, of course, names and places need to be changed, but I'll discuss exactly what happened on some of these film sets. You know, the director was terrible, and after we wrapped, he wrote everybody this email just berating and screaming and cursing everybody in this huge email with like 70 recipients on this email about how every single cast and crew member ruined his movie. And I read the email verbatim with the exception of names. And, you know, it's like, okay, dude, you're giving me fuel, man, because especially now, because no one's filming shit.
If you make it funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, those situations, like, to some people would have been traumatizing and horrible, and oh my god, this is awful. And to me, I found a way to be like, doesn't my life suck, guys? Like, you found a way to be like, yo, my boss sucks. Like, it's you can turn things around and make them funny if you really try. It's like, I mean, what's that word? I think fraud, or and it's where you enjoy other people's, like, discomfort.
Misery loves company.
There's a term of word that it's like you enjoy like when other people like go through some shit because it's, I don't know, it makes you feel better about yourself. I don't know. So I'll be the butt of every joke. I don't care.
Yeah, but I mean, Seinfeld, Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, they just threw all their shitty life experiences into Seinfeld. Larry David then created Curb through all his, you know, all his mistakes, all his fuck ups, other fuck ups around him, shit that people have done to him, threw it into Curb. You know, two great, phenomenal shows. And so, like now, I mean, with the new normal, and even with the new normal before the quarantine was podcasts and webisodes, you know, web series. And I mean, Howard Stern did it. Howard Stern's been doing it for decades, just talking about all sorts of shit. You know, he first kicked it off. Howard Stern first kicked it off on DC 101. You know, when he first got Robin Quivers. I think it's Robin Quivers. When he first got Robin, who was just supposed to sit in the booth and not say anything, but he turned to her and goes, "Hey, Robin, do women like sex? Because sometimes I just don't think women like sex." And that was the spark.
Yeah.
You know,
and
because
I love that he started around here too. I think that's even
right.
Cool. Now he's, you know, a household name, but he started on one of our stations. It's awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like he's having these issues at home and he doesn't think his wife likes having sex with him. So he just asked her on the air, do women even like sex?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, yeah. And then they spark. And now, I mean, look at them. They're Howard Stern and Robin and Fred and the whole rest of the gang.
Now, like, yeah.
And just so, you know, delving into like, what was that phrase? There was a movie. I forget the movie, but the critique was it's a scab peeling experience into something. But I think it was maybe Hurt Locker. Was a scab peeling, but like, you know, think about like that mentality. Like you're pulling. I mean, that's very kind of vulgar, but pulling back these scabs, pulling open these curtains and revealing like some uncomfortable shit that can be funny. It's like,
yeah.
Because I've experienced
that's why,
that
like,
too.
so many people like The Office because it's cringy. Like you're, you know, you're like,
yeah,
you know,
like, dude, stop.
Yeah, like I can't believe he said that, and then you have to remind yourself, like, it's obviously a show. He did not say that, but I'm sure there are people like that out there. You know, just no social cues, no cushion.
Oh yeah,
go for it.
There was that episode. There was that 2-part episode. I think the one episode where Phyllis revealed to everybody that Angela was sleeping with both Dwight and Andy, but Andy had left
the
party.
And then he walks in.
And then the next episode, he walks into work and he's all like, doodly doodly doo. And he's like, hey, what's going on, everybody? And Michael looks at him and he's like, what, you don't know? And Jim's pulling him in the room. He keeps walking out like, no, but seriously. And Jim's like, shut up. And then he starts shutting the door. He starts shutting the blinds. He's like, what are you doing? Stop.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I know that guy that won't shut up. Like, stop talking. Stop talking. Stop talking.
Can't read the room.
Can't read the room for shit.
But should be delicate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. One of my colleagues that I mentioned, we like 5 or 6 years ago, no, longer than that, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, we went to a party and they wanted to throw him out. They were like, yo, Nelson, you need to get your boy. He is too much. He's over the top. Fast forward 3 years from that, we go to another party. He's the life of the party. And he actually, it was kind of like this business schmoozing artsy party where there were some art investors there for some other friends of mine. And we were just in there. He started talking to like some of the most important people in the room, got him open up, got him to talk, got him to like have a few cocktails. And then other people succeeded and did well from his interaction. And we're just some schmoes. This was in like Pennsylvania. We're some schmoes from DC just showing up. Mm-hmm. And he opened up the entire party. Mm-hmm. The same guy doing the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So even a Michael Scott, because there's an episode where like Michael Scott saved the day just doing the same exact thing that he does that ruins everybody's lives at the office. Yeah. But I think he did something in like some convention and he was a huge.
Yeah, like sometimes it works to his advantage. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just kind of, I guess it shows once again, like life is just so versatile. It's not black and white. Like, yeah, in one situation he's the asshole, but in another situation, yeah, him being exactly the way he is works out. It just depends on the situation, the people involved, the setting. So yeah, like your friend going to that fancy party, like might not have worked out, but had he just been getting beers with you guys, no one would have said shit. So
right. Yeah, exactly.
you're used to it.
Well, what's next on the agenda for Michaela Shore? What's the next set of plans, say 6 months to a year from now? The podcast,
You know how many times my parents
making that bigger, bigger career path at some big media.
Yeah. So that plan has changed approximately 75 times this year. Before Corona, I was actually supposed to move to New York. I was going to work for a record label, just kind of keep with the music theme. Now, I mean, New York's a hot spot. They're shut down again. The music industry, I feel like no one's hiring right now. So my kind of long-term, short-term for right now, I would like to do one more summer in Ocean City. I made a lot of money there. I made great friends. It was a nice kind of little escape. It was kind of like, I don't know. It was temporary. I don't know. I had a lot of fun. So I think I want to do that again from May to September. Then when that's over, hopefully, by then it'll be fall. I hope Corona's a little more under control. And that's when I think I'm going to either do New York or LA, kind of complete switch. I love Maryland. Maryland's home. But I think at this point, I'm like, with all my interests are music and media and that kind of a thing. Nothing wrong with the DC area, but I feel like I need to go to one of the main epicenters. So I'll kind of decide more on that as the year goes on. Until May, I plan on just saving up money when I do get a job. Hopefully I'll get some unemployment this month, but there are all these rumors it's about to cut out. I don't really know. So yeah, just really save up money. I'm hoping when the bars open up again, I can just bartend for a few months until Ocean City. But now that I have all this free time, I'm really, just going to throw it into the podcast. I'm going to try to do one, I guess, a YouTube channel for it or some kind of to put like, kind of like you have, like to put the video podcast on. I'm hopefully going to lock down some sponsors and just kind of, just take this time to learn and get better at editing and get completely different guests. I normally only have people that I've been friends with forever on, but like this, we met today and we're talking for an hour. It's fine.
Right.
So really just until then, working on the podcast, biding my time till May, a few months in Ocean City, and then who knows?
Well, listen, I think you struck gold. At least do every summer in Ocean City and podcast that, because I know for a fact Ocean City is fucking dunzo fall and winter.
Yeah.
But I think you have like this this universe, this podcast universe within Ocean City, Maryland.
Oh yeah.
And only because I'm like a Maryland guy.
Yeah.
For the majority, like myself, traveled a bunch but for the most part lived in Maryland most of my life.
Yeah.
Like there's a podcast. There's this drama.
I did. I mean, I podcasted. I was living in a house, a total 6 people. So I had 5 roommates. Then I also had all the, characters in my job. And then we had 5 or 6 friends that would live on our couch basically. And we were a very codependent group. We did everything together. By the end, we would get into these like drunken fights and then the next morning wake up and be like, do you want to get Wawa? Like it was just it was like college without class. Mm-hmm. And so I did a few episodes with some of my friends there. And yeah, it was like the Ocean City episodes were so different than my episodes at home because it was a separate life. It was these people that I just met and became close with. They haven't known me for years. They knew me from end of May to end of September. And, they only knew me in Corona and they only knew me at this one job. They knew nothing about my life with the media company. And I would randomly be like, oh yeah, that one time I met like Shawn Mendes and and they'd be like, what? Because they weren't friends with me at that time when I had a cool job. So,
right.
So the Ocean City episodes, they were completely different, but they were so fun because it was people that knew me really well, but like for a short period of time, just kind of like if somebody picked up the podcast on episode 40 and listened to that one episode, that's a totally different experience than all of them all the way through.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fun. I definitely want to go back. They all loved being on it. They all want to be on it again. So my life, it's just so weird. I don't I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have to, in that sense of, you know, with the people in my life, I know I'm never going to be on the street. You know, but like right now, if I get unemployment or if I don't, I have a roof over my head. But it's just hard to plan for long term. I know a lot of people that started a job and 2 months into Corona got laid off. I know a lot of people that moved and then the second they move can't pay their rent because they don't have a job anymore. You know, it's I don't want to make a decision that's going to put me further in a hole, but I also don't want to be at a standstill. So I'm just kind of in this weird, I have loose plans, nothing major. Taking it day by day, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done that I've had to do that for a while. I've had to retool and restart and reboot. And I, listen, at 31, I enlisted in the military. I went to basic training at 31. So I was one of the oldest guys there, ready to like kill some of these 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But
Yeah.
I had a complete, you know, I had this epiphany. It was like totally restart, do that, came back with a whole new, you know, bunch of tools in the toolbox, got back into TV, started using that experience to act and started acting. And it's just, and it's just been like this, there is this kind of goal. There is a set goal or general set of goals, you know, 10, 15, 20 years from now. But
yeah, my dad, he joined the Army Reserves at I think 58, like lived a whole life, had grown kids, and was just like, you know, he always wished he joined the military, and he just found an opportunity for the reserves. Like, it's never too late. Like, my mom has changed her job a few times over the years. Like, so that's kind of, I totally get people wanting me to have a plan. I'm a very organized person. I want a plan. But like, just the state of the world the last year, like, I feel like everything's different now.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to put all my eggs and effort into one basket and then have it not work out because of Corona. So it's kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
And
it's a mess.
And I can't agree with you more, because it was my experimentation. It was my open-mindedness, like hindsight or being blessed or whatever you call it, where I dabbled into a number of different arenas, all within audio and video, all within film, TV. But I experimented with live streaming, corporate industrial events, which got me into live streaming the podcast, which got me into doing the whole remote virtual thing. It got, you know, I started dabbling into acting, which got me some voiceover work, which during quarantine, I did some voiceover work remotely, you know, all these little things here and there, you know, and then quarantine, since I was a director and AD, production manager on film sets, then they came out with the whole COVID compliance officer for film sets, because, you know, they need that now because, you know, they're back in productions, you know, productions are starting to ramp up again, but they need that sort of position. They need that sort of expert on set. So jumped on that and almost got a gig doing that, but not yet. But it's just like keeping that open. But where am I going to end up being? Am I going to end up being on set or in a studio in one capacity or another, or on location or on a site with a camera, with a microphone in front of the camera, behind the camera? How am I still remaining
in that medium
within this whole arena of audio and video and film and TV?
And that's kind of where I'm at now too. I'm just kind of anything with media, with film, with
because basically you're still doing radio.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Because I mean, some people could just take the audio. It's still a podcast. But yeah, I'm open to anything, especially kind of like I said, I wish I had gotten more creative the first time. I wish I had done more content. I wish I had collaborated with more people. So at this point, I'm kind of just so much more open to that. Like, that's kind of the main focus. It's like, at this point, we're 10, 11 months into this, like, I kind of know how to navigate it a little better now. And, you know, certain, kind of like you said, the new normal, certain things are just getting more and more normal, and not being in the same room as somebody is just more normal. So like, what can we do?
Well, you know, before I've asked a lot of people like what, I know there's this delay in Zoom, but, you know, before I asked a lot of people, you know, like, what's your view of the new normal? But but now that kind of idea of the new normal is that there's always been a new normal. Every year or two, there's always been a new normal. You know, somehow Trump got into office, But because Trump got into office, we wouldn't have the Me Too movement. We wouldn't have had this major push for gender equality, sexual orientation equality, race equality. It was a super ultra new movement because one person got in, something was pushed even harder.
Yeah.
And before that, I mean, Obama, a bunch of new normals because of 9/11. There was a whole bunch of new normals. Tech was tripled. Technology, internet went from dial-up AOL to like whatever we have now, like Ethernet within a year or two.
Yeah.
But tech was kind of slow, but because of 9/11, all these things were fast forwarded and pushed extra fast because if government has to keep track of that stuff, and that technology is out there, then that technology is now for mass consumption as well. And
even with the vaccine, people are saying, well, we still have cancer, we have no vaccine, but now with Corona, it came like that. And it's like, because there was a push for it, because the entire world is, falling apart, and millionaires, billionaires, Dolly Parton, they donated money to this, and everyone's trying to get this out as fast as possible so the world can go back to somewhat normal. And it's like, yeah, like if there's certain things cause a push for something.
Yeah. And
the fact that people are taking the vaccine is crazy to me.
Well, we have a vaccine for it in less than a year, which is more effective, like 90-something% effective, as opposed to the flu vaccine, which is like 60-something% effective. And we got this vaccine in less than a year. So either the government was lying to us and bullshitting us about what they're capable of, or this just fast forwarded it. Yeah. Which I would like to believe is the second one. That's what I'm saying.
I'd like to believe. I don't,
I'm always a little bit skeptical. I mean, since I'm still currently serving in the National Guard, I'm cautious about what I say. But I would like to believe that it's the second one, that this fast forwarded it, just like a lot of other events fast forwarded industry, fast forwarded technology, fast forwarded progressiveness, equality, and things of that nature. So yeah, absolutely. Well, if there was one last bit of advice, one last point you want to make, what would that be?
Ooh, no one ever asked me for it. No, I don't know. I think kind of like we're saying, like the world has changed. There is a new normal. I think what I learned this year was to keep pushing and to keep going and growing. And I think instead, when all this happened, I shut down, and I don't want to say like gave up on myself, but I just kind of sat on my butt and watched TV and let the world kind of go nuts around me. And I think a lot of people instead took that as, okay, this is what's happening, we're going to change it. They still made award shows happen, and they still made sports happen, and they still made late night TV happen. You've got to keep moving. And so I think advice that I'm taking myself that I want to give to other people is like, find a way. This halted a lot, this postponed a lot, this did affect a lot, but we're still alive. Like some of us, it's kind of like, just don't stop. Find something. If your career is shut down, go after a new passion, find something else, take up a new hobby. I know, there were people that never picked up a paintbrush in their life, and in quarantine realized they loved art, and now they're selling it on Etsy. And I don't know, just keep hustling. Don't give up on yourself. Don't let the state of the world right now ruin everything for you, because it is temporary as far as we know. We have the vaccine, they're starting to give it out to people. Things are slowly, capacities are going up and down for certain businesses, but I think there didn't seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel for a while, but whether we see it or not, it is there, and just keep going.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
I sound so cheesy, but
no, it's not. I mean, it's important that people just keep getting that, reaffirmation that this is temporary. And stay creative. And my productions, for me, for example, my productions have been halted and or drastically altered, but I'm still pulling them off in such a way that they still meet my expectations.
Yeah.
But I think right now people audience in general is kind of understanding that maybe something is a little lesser quality. If it still has that content, it still has those ideas. We're doing a podcast virtually, and it's, my little screen here and my little screen here and your little screen here, and it's like this picture in picture type of thing, instead of us just being in the same room, sitting across from each other, and different, 3-4 camera flipping back and forth. It looks different, but it's the same freaking conversation we'd be having if we were in the same room, in that same studio, sharing the same mic, or we have our own mics, or if it's a big studio, and we have like those big mics with the pop screens and all that stuff. So so I think we're still having the same conversation, and we're having, and also with like a new subject matter. Every day is different. Howard Stern when 9/11 happened, Howard Stern was talking about that. And then when Barack Obama got in office, he was talking about that. And, when Trump got in office, Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla, they were talking about that on their podcast. They were talking about that. And now it's COVID, and now it's going to, and then it's going to be Biden, and then it's going to be aliens landing on planet Earth, and us, co-populating with aliens, or hopefully not a zombie outbreak.
You've got to just be honest about what's going on,
Right.
Like even when something, like when bad things happen, when good things happen, whether it's your subject matter or not, like, my podcast has nothing to do with healthcare, but I talked about Corona. Like we talked about when it happened. I talked about how it was affecting me. I actually got Corona. I walked through the whole process of that. Like that has nothing to do with my theme of my podcast, but like when big things happen that affect everybody, I feel like it's kind of like the responsibility of people in media to shed light on it.
Awesome. Well, any plugs, links, socials you want to put out there before we?
Pretty much you can listen to my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called Pretty Irrelevant. I listen to Spotify, iTunes, whatever I feel like that day. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, Pretty Relevant Podcast. My personal Instagram is michaela.shore, michaela.shore. And if you have any questions, comments, and concerns, you can email prettyrelevantpodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome, Michaela. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I gotta go outside and play with the kid in the snow. It's his first snowstorm, so he's gonna probably not even.
That's so cute.
He probably won't.
I have to take my sister to the airport, so hopefully
awesome.
that the roads are clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Michaela, I can't thank you enough for coming on and I learned a lot. Definitely inspired. Gender and age differences be damned. Definitely learned a lot. I love the productivity, the creativity, pushing through, like the quarantine and making something out of the downtime. It's awesome. To my viewers, I hope I've earned the privilege of your time and viewership. I know my guest has. And until next time, you know what to do.